OpenZeppelin have recently released a new extension for the NFT library on Stellar. For developers, this means we can now set up and earn royalties for the NFT collections that we create. Let's dive in and take a look at how this works. Okay, if we go into the OpenZeppelin Stellar contracts GitHub repository, we can go into examples and then NFT royalties, and there should be an example contract in here. Here we go. Let's copy this and put it into soropg.com. This is an online IDE for Soroban smart contracts. And to get this working correctly, we're gonna have to make some modifications. So let's delete the comments at the top. Then we're gonna call this royalty example contract. We've got our metadata address here, the URL for that. We could change that to IPFS maybe if we wanted to do this kind of in a decentralized way. Then got the token name and the ticker symbol. I'm going to leave them as they are for now because we just want to focus on the royalties. On this next line, we're setting a default royalty. Now this is in basis points. So it means that the admin address that's set up in this constructor argument here, we're passing in an admin address when we deploy this contract. And that is going to get a royalty of 1,000 basis points or 10%. A basis point is a percentage of a percentage. So 1 basis point is 1% of 1%. Let's change this down to 100 basis points. And then we're going to leave all access control systems in place. At the moment, it's currently set up so that only the admin can mint. We don't want to mint with royalties. We can delete that function. We don't want someone to pay an admin fee when they mint. I just want a mint function so that anyone can call it. So I'm going to delete the macro for the admin there. If this is in a production environment, we might want to put a limit on how many of these NFTs someone can mint. But for this example, we're just going to leave it as a free-for-all. The rest of this all looks fine. We're just changing the name here, here, and here to royalty example contract. Got set default royalty, set token royalty. This is actually a function where we can go in and set an independent address and royalty amount for each individual token. So the different token IDs can have different royalties. We'll not be using that in this contract, but we'll leave that in there as it's part of the library. And then finally, royalty info is the public function that could be called where you pass in a token ID and a sales price, and you get an address and the royalty amount out. Let's go ahead and compile this, run some unit tests. There's not actually any unit tests on this, but it will tell us if there's any bugs in the contract if it doesn't compile. That's all fine. Let's go ahead and compile that to WebAssembly. It's got an issue where we're not using only admin. Let's delete this. Try again. And it's saying that the Soroban SDK standard. I think what the problem is here is we don't have the no standard function here. Let's try that. We don't want to import the standard library into Rust. We need a kind of stripped down version to compile this. That's gone through now. I've got the royalty example contract.wasm file downloaded. Let's go ahead and deploy it to testnet. So I'm going to generate a new wallet. That should also give me some testnet funds. That's not going to go through because I haven't added the constructor arguments. So let's add in the admin address. I'm going to use my own address. So address, and then the manager address, same. Let's try that again. And we've got a contract ID here, so that's been deployed. Let's go and load that into the Explorer now. You can see we have all the functions here for the NFT contract, including this get royalty info. Now let's have a quick look at the library itself and see how this works. So if we go back to OpenZeppelin's main contract library for Stellar, we can go to packages, we can go to tokens, non-fungible, source extensions, and then royalties. And let's take a look at storage and see if we can find, we've got a set default royalty here, which is the function we used. There's the set individual token royalties here. And then we've got the royalty info. We pass in a token ID and a sales price, and it passes back the an address and a U32, a tuple containing the receiver address and the royalty amount. If there's no specific token royalty set, it returns the default royalty, which is the behavior you'd expect. The one thing to bear in mind is that this isn't enforced within the contract. This is dependent on NFT marketplaces actually implementing this logic. So just because someone can check that there is a royalty doesn't mean it's actually taken whenever there's a transfer. If someone transfers an NFT from one wallet to another, no royalty is paid. Certain NFT marketplaces like OpenSea do support NFT royalties, but within the Stellar ecosystem, this is still very new. This has only just been released by OpenZeppelin. So it's going to take a little while to become established and integrated into all these different NFT marketplaces. One of the Stellar NFT marketplaces, Lightmin, if you go into their frequently asked questions, it does actually mention that they are working currently on an NFT royalty system. So if you are developing an NFT smart contract on Soroban, it might be worth looking at this. And although you might not get any royalties straight away, over time, these integrations are going to come about and it might be beneficial further down the line. It's an excellent way that developers and artists can be rewarded through the trading volume on secondary marketplaces. If you want to learn more about building on Stellar and developing NFTs and creating Soroban smart contracts, then there's a bunch of resources and developer documentation linked to in the description. Hit the like button to train the algorithm, and thank you for watching.